Hello, my name is Alegria. I'm the president of Metalak, an impact investor and passionate about creating impact in the world through supporting businesses and entrepreneurs that are purpose driven. And I'm really glad to be here at the Voices of the Future.
We are genuinely delighted, privileged, and super happy to have my dear friend Alex Alegria here in our little studio. Alex is not doing justice to himself by just introducing one of the things he does, because he does many. He is an eclectic mix of many ideas, many nationalities, lived in many countries, and I'm sure he has a lot of stories to tell us. Today, however, we'll be discussing his approach and his impact investment work that he is doing, which is fundamentally changing the world and making a difference. And Voices of the Future as a platform is about making a difference in the world. And that is where all of these amazing, beautiful voices like Alex's are coming together to engage us and to give us his insights and wisdom. Alex, welcome. Good to see you, brother.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I hope I did justice to the interview, to the introduction.
You always expanded even more.
Yeah, very kind. Alex, it's wonderful to have you. You know, we are friends, we are associates, we are alumni from HBS, we are friends. I mean, you know, I'm really happy that you are here to talk to us about your impact investing and really, as I said, how to make a difference in the world. Tell us about little Alex, young Alex, what may have affected you, your parents, school, an incident, one of your early memories to help us see what shaped your life to become who you are today.
I would always think of my father. I remember when I was at HBS, I interviewed him back in 2014 for the first time. You know, and it's not usual that you interview your dad, you know. And I had a set of questions which were designed by the Authentic Leadership program, and I would say that was one of the most interesting conversation I've ever had with my dad, and I discovered that a lot of things of who I am today is coming from that background of ethicality, integrity, and being service to others. Maybe until then, I was not, you know, it's always there in your subconscious mind, but you don't get the time to reflect on it. And I was privileged to reflect on these questions, and I take these learnings very seriously.
What were your questions to him? Can you share one or two?
Yeah. So it was about, you know, the views about challenges that he faced in his career and his life, and how that has shaped him. And a lot of these things, there was always this, you know, two things, the highlight of these answers: resilience, and then sticking to your principles, no matter what, you know, because you will be challenged. And then what is moral and what is legal will be, you know, very blurry at some point. But knowing what you stand for and what your values are will make it always easier, you know.
It's quite interesting. You talk about sort of old school values, and I feel that they are 10 times more important than they were 50 years ago. And now we need to be testing our integrity and other elements, and we'll dive into it much deeper. But I feel that that's becoming more and more important, the human values, and particularly in a world of technology.
Absolutely.
But as we move forward, Alex, what happened in school? What did you study, and do you still practice what you went to university for?
I'm a civil engineer by by education, not by career, really. Um, I did also my master's in project management in Australia. Then, Harvard came in 2014. And that was a time that I wanted to have a change. It wasn't so much about going to Harvard, but, I was really thirsty for a change, and it was a good time to go there and meet a lot of wonderful people.
So as a young person, were you naughty? Were you wild, drugs, sex, and rock and roll? Or were you getting straight A's and impressing your dad?
Well, so it reminds me with Dr. Snook, in HBS. He said, there's always two stories,
Yeah.
There is the, the hero story, and there's the real story.
Yeah.
So if I want to share the real story,
Yeah.
I mean, I was a nerd. I was bullied in school,
Right.
and the only thing I could do is just study. And it was my escape, to be very honest. I was a very quiet guy, introvert. I don't like problems. I still don't.
Yes.
I avoid them. And so the only thing I remember that I just spent my time studying, not even, playing. I didn't have hobbies in that sense.
Where was this? Which country were you in at that stage?
Well, I moved quite a bit.
Yes.
So my dad was working in the oil industry, and he moved a bit. Part was Algeria, North Africa, even Saudi Arabia as well. He was working in the oil company there, so I was also there. I moved quite a bit when I was young.
And you also have a lot of time in Latin America, in South America.
Yes. So I'm Chilean, and I spent actually the most of my time that I spent in my life, I would say, in Chile, 10 years. The rest is scattered among 10, 12 countries. I don't keep count. It's just what happened when you face this challenge when you are a young kid, and you're taken from one school to another country. You have to adapt. And I blamed my dad for that without voicing it out.
Yeah.
But then it became my life later on,
Yeah.
I guess, but I'm grateful for that.
Yeah. It's quite interesting. Today I was on looking at my Facebook, and I saw one of these visual capitalist kind of things, which shows how countries change. And it was like a little 1 minute, and it was on South America, and which country is the richest country in South America. And it started in 1968 or 65 until 2023. And it was quite interesting, it was fascinating, and how Venezuela was right at the top.
Yes.
And it's actually gone right to the bottom. Guyana has come right to near the top. And then I saw Uruguay as number 2.
Yeah.
And Chile is right up there too. So Chile, Uruguay, I'm like thinking, we don't know enough about these amazing countries.
Yeah.
And I actually went in and looked at Wikipedia on Uruguay and why it is number 2. Chile, I understand that there are many interesting opportunities, especially the way they are in the south of the equator.
Yes.
And so I find that fascinating how countries just found a way. And with Guyana now finding after Venezuela the largest repository of oil and gas, I think that's going to change the dynamics of the whole Caribbean, I would say, and a lot of the thing. What are your thoughts on something like that? How these things and shifts have taken place, and what do you see them developing into?
South America has been always, until now, more driven by exploring its natural resources, really.
Exploring or exploiting? A big difference there.
Yeah, I mean, probably the latter.
Yes.
I would say more exploiting.
Sadly.
Yeah. Not much going on, except if you take Brazil as an exception. there's not much industries really. So it's all about exploitation of mineral resources or oil resources, whatever resources that is. And the trend continues to be that.
Yeah.
I go back to what I remember, I was a good student at HBS. Culture beats strategy for breakfast.
100%.
Right?
100%.
So you need a culture that supports efficiency, supports innovation. And I think that is still lacking, to be honest. Of course, that can only be empowered by the type of education system, which I still see, there's a lot of work. Chile have been trying to do something about it, but they're not there yet.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but Chile is a net exporter of power. Am I right in understanding that? Because they produce more than 100% of power through natural resources,
Yes.
both solar and wind. And
Yes.
actually, they're exporting to their neighboring countries because, so to me, that suddenly becomes an amazing benchmark of a nation
Right.
that actually is producing more than it needs, and therefore
Right.
it exports that. And this could be an interesting model for other places.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a clear strategy in Chile about even green hydrogen, for example, being the lowest cost producer of green hydrogen, and eventually the biggest exporter, one of the biggest exporters. The terrains, the geography, the weather, it supports a lot of that, and I think there is a lot of potential. I would say there is, a directive strategy when it comes to that in Chile. There's still some work to be done on the innovation side, but I mean, again, Chile is a small country, 20 million people, so and the size of other countries, even Latin America, that's very small. Except that it's very long.
It's very, very long. Absolutely. When I look at you and I think about you being an impact investor today, at 23, 24, 25, you don't sort of say, oh, I'm going to grow up to be an impact investor. What was your journey? What were the top 2, 3, 4 kind of jobs, careers, investments? Or, take us through that journey of yours.
Right. So I started my career in the metal industry. My first 4 years I was working in the aluminum industry. Not that I, planned to work. I guess that's the job I got, back then. It was interesting because it was my first encounter with waste, generated in the industries. And it was an eye-opener because when I was working there, and I see that the like 20% of the production is actually goes to waste, and then they have to sell it, and some traders, they come in and then they buy it and so on. So that got me hooked on let's say the recycling of metals. So 2001, I quit my job and I started my company. And my first recycling operation, which people sometimes, don't take that maybe as a surprise, that was in Egypt back in 2001. And Egypt back then, I mean, as an industrial nation in North Africa, it had a lot of, let's say, recyclable metals. And it was a very interesting journey for me. That took me to setting up processing facilities in North Africa, Central and South America later on, 2008, and I consolidated these operations and I sold them. And for me, it was, I have to say, it wasn't about impact. I was just a businessman, driven by adventure, an entrepreneur. I loved living in different countries, emerging different cultures and so on. And then it was a good business, but I never looked at it as, that I'm actually doing an impact, and that's what when intentionality, is not part of the thing. But that journey has changed along the years.
What was the epiphany? What shifted you? What happened in your life to get you to go into impact from commercial?
Right.
You can still make money while doing impact, but
yes, yeah, of course. So I would say it was more personal shift, and that is, I would say, more spiritual shift. And I remember back in 2011, I was in Bali in a holistic retreat, and I met a guy, his name Janur, who became later on one of the CNN heroes. And I consider him a mentor of mine. So I remember asking him a question. I said, Janur, in my life, I feel like I'm swimming toward an island, and that island represents, my end of journey. But I'm actually afraid that when I get there, either there's no island or I'm at the wrong island, And then he said, in Hinduism, we have a concept called Maya. I said, what is Maya, Janur? He said, Maya is that we live in a state of illusion, and anything we believe in, it becomes true. If you believe that there is an island, then that's your truth. So there is an island. And I, stand and kind of reflect on that. And then my life became more about the journey. So it wasn't that single point, I would say, destination that I'm just looking at. And then, since then, my life is not the same. But I have to say, I also, it's been a long journey. It's not just a single point, because there was always this duality between how business is done and who you are as a person, and how you bridge these two.
True. So the business that you got into in the waste management business, and particularly 25 years ago, it's a very non-sexy space.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
Exactly. So for the, you're the guy who's taking away your junk to, sort things out.
Yeah.
So, and even myself, even 5-6 years ago, when I was first introduced to waste management, to me it was a non-sexy space. But the more I'm seeing it, the more I see the implications in terms of impact, in terms of sustainability, in terms of a circular economy, and so on. What I found fascinating, and I haven't understood it to this day, is that you found a formula, and everybody has a sort of like a secret formula in terms of when they succeed in a certain business, which nobody else understands.
Yes.
So you were in a very, very specific niche. Without giving away any state secrets, what was that formula? What was that unique thing that you could do to buy and sell and make a margin when nobody else was even seeing it?
So I've always, when I see a waste and is not being utilized, even when I didn't have an intentionality of creating impact, for me it was like I asked myself, why? Why is this thing sitting there? There's somebody would be able to utilize it. I just need to figure out who can recycle this. And that has been the story. One of the byproducts from the industrial steel manufacturing in Latin America, I was the pioneer to recycle 250,000 tons of that, which was never being recycled before through Chinese partners in China. So the thing is that having this kind of urge to always find a solution, I think is very important. And I always try to find these problems, identify them, where's that waste that cannot be or is not being utilized, and find a solution to actually create value along the supply chain. That has been my thing, and to create a niche.
And let's look forward. One of the key words that I have encountered, particularly over the last 18 months, 2 years, is the circular economy. And you've alluded to that in some ways, but I would like you to, as an expert, define what is the circular economy and what's the impact to us as business people, as normal people, within that circular economy. Because according to McKinsey, 60-70% of the companies by 2030, if they're not practicing and utilizing all of the benefits of a circular economy, they will be one in a minority and potentially going bust.
Yes.
So if it's that important, why isn't it front and center in the world? So please start. What is the circular economy and how it impacts us, and why don't we know more about it?
So in simple form, a circular economy is the ability to recycle, reuse, repurpose materials, and thinking or changing that way of thinking, that how we plan our economy based on extractive linear model.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
which starts, we mine something, then we use it as raw material, we produce, and then we throw it, and then we go back again. And this, in the circular economy, doesn't happen that way. So it's more of a closed loop. Although nowadays we are also more passionate about regenerative economy as another way of looking at the economy itself. So in my line of business, providing circular innovation or empowering circular innovation for global well-being, specifically in the metal industry, because that's where we operate, is at the core of what we actually do. So we always think about how we can provide sustainable solutions that ultimately our vision would be to have this industry on 100% circular, which still has a lot of way to go. So this is where we fit exactly in that space.
I mean, in the book, Voices of the Future, what Alex is talking about is circular economy. We also have Lord Brian Wilkie. He runs a company called Enviroserve, and I learned a lot through that company and when I helped to launch it. And so when I was there, it was basically, let's take a simple example that the average person will understand. I have a cell phone. And when I run out of my cell phone, there has to be a way to take that and really play that whole loop. And literally, when I went to Enviroserve, they had broken it down into all its component parts. Yes. And therefore, we are able to utilize that again and recycle it back into the business. We had Nespresso coffee makers, we had refrigerators, we had... But I mean, mobile phones and laptops was obviously amongst the leading example. I'll put another angle in there, and I'm sure you and I will have a laugh on this one, but I would say that more than just the extractive economy and linear thinking, we have something called hypercapitalism and greed. I don't need to be replacing my Samsung or my iPhone every 12, 18 months. They are driving us to change it because otherwise we get left behind. Yes. In our parents' environment, in the days, you buy a refrigerator and it's going to last 15 years, 20 years. It's not supposed to be thrown away. You buy a washing machine, it lasts forever. And I remember from my parents, how come 30 years ago, things just last much longer and they don't. And I think it's hypercapitalism. And I think is the way we're driving and pushing. And then you have the extraction from Africa and Latin America in terms of metals and stuff like that. How do we join that? And you as an impact investor, on the one hand, you see the world being raped. And on the other hand, you are trying to impact it in a positive way. But how do we change these people in the middle who are really screwing us?
I think it starts by understanding that there is a new way to reimagine capitalism and think about the well-being economy, economy that is designed for the well-being of the people and planet. And money serves both, the planet and people. And unfortunately, or fortunately, GDP starts with a private consumption. So you are ought to consume more and be motivated to consume more so that GDP grows.
And what is this obsession with GDP? It's so old-fashioned and it so doesn't measure anything appropriate to this today.
So I think this is where also regenerative economy comes in, and circularity, where we could possibly attain or have some growth without the necessity of having more consumption. So I think there is a lot of talk here about limits to growth. In that sense, a lot of discussions about that. And I think maybe the idea of what is enough, even what is enough. And I would say even on financial assets, we have 5 times the financial assets in the world, which will probably be able to conquer Mars with this money. And they are sitting there. So financial assets also are growing on a rapid pace, and that fueled by this extractive economy. So there has to be a question of what is enough, and how do we bridge also this gap between the ones who have and the ones who don't.
I mean the disparity is growing more and more, and the current system, the oligarchic system that we've got now, where 20 companies will effectively own the world. And going forward with AI and stuff clicking in, they become even more powerful than they ever have been in the past. So there is a big conversation around that. I don't think, sadly, and I'm here being a bit skeptical, that the world is aware enough in terms of what are the potential pitfalls going forward if they don't make a hard stop and reset in some way, shape, or form.
Absolutely.
I have a beautiful diagram which I do in my presentations, and it's a globe, and I've drawn it in half, and one side is burning, and I have growth and profit there. And the other side we have, and it used to be the triple bottom line: people, planet, profit. I've added 2 more. And the next to me is purpose and prosperity. And the last is peace. And so you burn the world through growth and profit, which is actually a mantra wherever we go in the world. People, planet, purpose, and peace. These are the 4 new things that I'm talking about other than profit. How long is the journey, and you as an impact investor probably looking at these other 4 elements, how real is that? I mean, or am I just smoking something and getting excited about the fact that I am living in a 5P world,
Well, if there's no hope, there's nothing left for humanity. So hope is very important for us. And with that comes also planning and, actionable strategies. I would say, taking a step backward, Milton Friedman, the Nobel Prize winner economist, said the only social responsibility of a company is its responsibility toward its shareholders. So this is where the problem is,
That's exactly where the problem is.
That's the core principle. When that changes, and then started changing lately with ESG and so on. But still, how everything else would affect the risk of environment, the risk of the human rights and whatever, how the effect of that on the bottom line. We're still looking at the risk of the planet, people on the bottom line. So it's kind of like thinking about who's the master here, is it the people and planet, or is it the capital at the end? And I'm a production of this capital society, so it's not to say that I'm against it, but I think everybody is eager to see a new system where you empower businesses that are purpose-driven, that they look at the world in a different way. And these businesses are more efficient, they have more values, more resilient by culture. Metalike itself, the company I'm running, is a steward ownership company, meaning that the shares in the company doesn't belong to me, doesn't belong to the partners. We have a divide between economic rights and voting rights. An investor has an economic rights, but he doesn't have any voting rights. Everybody else in the company has an equal voting rights. So there are new systems, new governance, a new way of doing things. I think I would say until now, it's looked at more as a niche rather than a mainstream. And then the big question is how this can be a mainstream.
Sure. I mean, we had COP28 here recently in Dubai, and 29 is in Azerbaijan next year. Both of them oil-producing countries, hardcore oil-producing countries. Yes. This year's COP28, a lot of the oil executives were there. But even more interestingly and more offensively to me, most of the big financial executives were here.
Yes.
So it really is a big business and financial exercise. So if we are just nudging things on the edges, on 2, 3, 5% is adjusting, we can celebrate the adjustment, but it's certainly not enough. I have a thesis, 2 elements. Firstly, is that oil companies have got about $5 trillion worth of assets in the ground, in the sea, extracting oil for the foreseeable future. They're going to fight like crazy. They're not going to throw away the $5 trillion. So whatever ESG nonsense comes in, is a nice to do. It's my 5 trillion. That's giving me the returns. I'm paying the shareholders. So all this thing is a lot of talk. And how much real impact is there? Hard question.
Well, certainly there's a lot of greenwashing, impact washing, a lot of kind of washing going on.
Yes.
I give you an example. Shell, to be compliant with the ESG requirements, they sold a lot of their contaminating assets to a private equity firm.
Who are then raping the contaminated assets anyway, but with less responsibility. The shell looks good.
Exactly.
They've cleaned up, but it's gone somewhere else.
Exactly. They are making enormous profits and they don't care, because they're not publicly listed.
Yes.
And they are not under scrutiny.
Yes.
So I think there's this kind of, I call this climate justice, I believe that there is a balance in the world. But what we're lacking to understand is that somebody looks good, but on overall, we look bad.
Sure.
Yeah. And we are still approaching the problem from a very territorial way of thinking, not approaching it, this is our planet, this is us, that we live in this planet, we are part of it. How can we preserve this for the next generation? That's the issue.
When I present on sustainability, environment, and so on, which I do regularly as a keynote speaker, or certainly bring it into my conversation, I have 2 phrases that I always use, and I'll test it on you. You may have heard it from me. And the first one is that green is the new digital.
Right.
10 years ago, digital was a department under IT or under some kind of marketing or something like that. Today, it's omnipresent. It's everywhere.
Yes.
So therefore, we don't think digital. Digital is as an integral part of who we are. It's like electricity and air. So until and unless we make green like we have digital, which means that anything and everything I do, I think with green in mind.
Right.
Every business plan, every product, every process, every conversation, hiring people, firing people, and. Right. Everything needs to be through the lens of green. What are your thoughts on that?
I think certainly this is absolutely the case. I think I would add to that intentionality. Okay. which is, if you define impact investment, the first element or the foundation of it is actually intentionality. If you take that away, there is nothing called impact, even though you are doing something in between brackets that looks impactful. Because when you add this intentionality, you already have the filter. I am doing this because I would like to create impact. So this is real. This is not me trying to look good. This is not me trying to, tick boxes on ESG framework or whatever. This is me saying that this is part of my values. This is part of who I am. Having sustainability as part of your values, not to look good, but it's part of your intentionality. So I think how human always being motivated by pain or by reward. We are being motivated by reward, but soon we'll be motivated by pain or avoiding pain, So, and that where the change is going to happen.
You mentioned the word sustainability. That's my second statement. And the second statement is that sustainability needs to be more profitable than the dirty business for it to be adopted properly and comprehensively. Do you see that people are looking at sustainability in a way to make it way more profitable as opposed to just doing it because it's the nice thing to do?
Well, there are two schools here. One school suggests that, we need to prove to the world, that impact investing and sustainability and putting money into sustainable projects, that's even more profitable than standard projects, so that we attract people. So there's that school. I'm not part of that school. And there is another school, is that this is the right thing to do. This is not luxury. This is not something that we need to find a reason for the profit to actually justify it. We facing huge problems in the world: environmental degradation, inequalities, failing institutions. We cannot handle all these problems by looking at sustainability as a way to make more money. And there's another, and I'm not suggesting that some sustainable projects that they're not returning actually more. But if that becomes only the case, then that will stay as a niche. And the other thing is that I would say in the business, we need to, or in the sustainability space, we need also to consider what are we looking at in the future, as a company. If we don't integrate this as part of our intentionality, sooner or later, these companies will disappear.
Sure.
So, and the third thing is, what do you do with these accumulated financial assets, right? So you make more money, great. We have 5 times the global GDP in financial assets. What do you do with this? You have to invest them somewhere. So to invest them somewhere, you have to keep, following this extractive economic model. So there is a limit to that, that we need to think about, because this is not just, one-way stream.
So for the audience watching this podcast and listening to it, let me do something simple. The GDP in the world at the moment is just over 100 trillion. But the financial assets in terms of equity, real estate, bonds, etc., is around 450 trillion. That's the 5 times.
Yes.
A lot of people don't actually see it that way. They think the wealth is the GDP, but actually the wealth is out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then
these are the decision makers of the world.
That's right.
BlackRock and all these guys.
Absolutely. And talking about black, there's the black economy within there, which is sort of under the table economy, which is the criminal economy and so on. They are extremely strong and powerful. So whether it's in cybersecurity or cyber environment, or there's a huge environment there that is also has an impact and has an interest in the future. You are in a very tough industry, very hard industry, as I would call it.
Yeah.
My view is that that anything that can be digitized, and there's a lot of digitization going on, process shifts going on within the sustainability in the metal industry
Right.
and the circular economy.
Right.
So anything that can be digitized will be, because it'll be a million times faster and a million
Right.
times cheaper.
Absolutely.
But anything and everything that cannot be digitized, love, compassion, harmony, heart, soul, spirit, ethics, judgment, critical thinking, imagination, intuition, will be a million times more valuable.
Absolutely.
What are we doing? What are you doing as part of your industry development and your impact investment development? Is to look at these, I call them soft side, the world calls them soft side of the business. Actually, I think soft is hard.
Right.
It's much, much harder to be soft
Right,
than to do the physical stuff. How are you retraining your mind personally, your team, and actually your industry into looking at the human aspect of the and as opposed to just the physical aspect?
Yeah, it's this is really at the core of my belief personally. What I do, and I always look at myself. I want to be the change that I would like to see in the world.
Nice.
So it starts within me personally, and that's why I've been on a spiritual journey as well. I don't mean a religious, but more of being connected to my higher self. I'm doing a lot of work internally. So last week we just had our retreat for the company leaders, and the first 2 days were training about consciousness evolution.
Wow.
Yes.
What does that mean?
It means how you can expand your awareness. And taking a Rumi quote here, you're not a drop in the ocean, but you are the entire ocean in a drop.
In a drop. Yeah.
So bringing that and expanding the consciousness to live as a spiritual being, having human experience rather than the other way around, and live by the universal law, the law of interconnectedness, the law of collaboration, the law of harmony. These are all the laws of nature. So we're doing this internally, and as well planning to do that among the executive of the industry. And we think about this as in system thinking, which is at the core of the change. So the core of the change of that inverted pyramid is these culture, values, beliefs. A lot of work going there. Of course, on the top, the capital flow and so on, policies, practices, networking, and so on. These are other things, but at the core of all that, if you change everything and you don't change the values and the beliefs and the culture, you are building something that has no foundation.
Yes, I mean, I use the example of an iceberg, and that's exactly what it is. And
Absolutely,
it's beautifully articulated by you. I'm amazed and really impressed by the fact that you are testing this side in terms of leadership, because I think this sort of conscious leadership is sort of really missing in the world. And I'm a servant leader myself. I think that kind of service-based leadership is also something that I think can work really, really well as we look into the future.
Absolutely.
So as we look into the future, my final question to you is, we get into a time machine and we project ourselves into the future, and it's your 100th birthday. And you
if I make it that far.
No, you absolutely will, because longevity, and there are 3 people in the book who are talking about longevity. You'll live to well over 100, because if you, by the way, every year that you live another 2, and every 2 years you live, you'll another 4. And if you live the next 10 years healthily, then you're through. So
I'll take that.
Absolutely, you should. So when we are, on your 100th birthday, what are we celebrating, Alex? When we look outside the window, what do we see? Who's around you? What's your island that you spoke about earlier on?
My island is Ithaca, and that's the paradise, in the old Greek.
Yes.
So it's really about the journey, I would say. As the poet, Gaddafi said, arriving to Ithaca is what you are destined for. Don't expect Ithaca to make you rich. Ithaca gave you the journey. Without her, you have not gained all the wisdom and experiences along the way.
Wow. That's beautiful. I love you. I didn't realize you're also a poet, or at least enjoy poetry. That's beautiful. So when we arrive in Ithaca, what else is there? I mean, what is that journey that you went through over the next 30, 40, 50 years?
To be honest, I'm not a seeker of legacy. I'm not a seeker that my name to be remembered. For me, is evolving as a person. Who I become in this journey is really what matters. I always say to my team and everybody I meet, the only journey is worth taking is that inner journey.
Is that?
The inner journey.
Inner journey.
Yes. And who I become is what I'm actually, looking forward to. I'm more like a child in this journey, curious about all these uncertainties. And I don't project much, of seeing a particular point. In my mind, as I wake up in the morning, I know what my intentions are to use my talent in service to humanity. And I do my best actions every day. So for me, if I die tomorrow, I'm okay. I don't have to achieve, the big dreams or big things. But I keep doing this every day. And being able to do that and grow and having all these endless possibilities, it is how you actually play on that quantum field with the pure potentiality. This is what gets me excited,
Amazing.
The unknown gets me excited.
Yes, when I spoke about the Museum of the Future and we see that sphere, I said, I see the donut, I see the external, but actually the space in the middle, the unknown, excites me more because
Absolutely.
That's exploration, that's
Absolutely.
Discovery, that's
Absolutely.
Alex, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very, very much indeed. And, I have discovered a lot about you today, and I'm very happy about that.
Thank you.
We were with Alex Alegria. What a revelation. I mean, even though we are dear friends and we've spent time on yachts and boats and I've had dinner at his home and vice versa, but he touched me today with his poetry about expanding consciousness, a new type of leadership, about looking at some of the philosophy and wisdom of our masters from the past and that inner journey that he speaks about. And that really, ladies and gentlemen, is what Voices of the Future is about. As you can see, the book is now ready and it's in the final stages of being completed. And really what it is that collective consciousness, the collective knowledge, and the collective impact of these 100 amazing, beautiful voices that we have here, and how we can make a difference, both in our lives and for humanity. And that is what we discussed today with a lot of humility, with a lot of authenticity and humanity. And I'm very, very grateful to Alex that he has done that. Alex, welcome. Good to see you, brother.
Thank you, brother.
Really,
Thanks for
really
having
happy
me.
Thank you. Thank
It's
you
my
so much.
pleasure.
Cheers.